Hello Year 6, I hope that you're all well. I'm going to read to you Chapter 7 from Holes today. I'm reading from my front room. The shovel felt heavy in Stanley's soft, fleshy hands. He tried to jam it into the earth, but the blade banged against the ground and bounced off without making a dent. The vibration ran up the shaft of the shovel and into Stanley's wrists, making his bones rattle. It was still dark. The only light came from the moon and the stars, more stars than Stanley had ever seen before. It seemed he'd only just gotten to sleep when Mr. Pendanski came in and woke everyone up. Using all his might, he brought the shovel back down into the dry lake bed. The force stung his hands but made no impression on the earth. He wondered if he had a defective shovel. He glanced at Zero, about 15 feet away, who scooped out a shovelful of dirt and dumped it on a pile that was already almost a foot tall. For breakfast, they'd been served some kind of lukewarm cereal. The best part was the orange juice. They each got a pint carton. The cereal actually didn't taste too bad, but it smelled just like his cot. Then they filled their canteens and got their shovels and were marched out across the lake. Each group was assigned a different area. The shovels were kept in a shed near the showers. They all looked the same to Stanley, although X-Ray had his own special shovel which nobody else was allowed to use. X-Ray claimed it was shorter than the others, but if it was only by an inch or two. The shovels were 5 feet long, from the tip of the steel blade to the end of the wooden shaft. Stanley's hole would have to be as deep as his shovel, and he'd have to be able to lay the shovel across the bottom in any direction. That was why X-Ray wanted the shortest shovel. The lake was so full of holes and mounds that it reminded Stanley of pictures that he'd seen of the moon. "If you find anything interesting or unusual," Mr. Pendanski had told him, "you should report it to either me or Mr. Sir when we're round with the water truck. If the warden likes what you found, you'll get the rest of the day off." "Oh, what are we supposed to be looking for?" Stanley asked him. "Oh, you're not looking for anything. No, you're just digging to build character. If you find anything, though, the warden would like to know about it." He glanced helplessly at his shovel. It wasn't defective. He was defective. He noticed a thin crack in the ground and he placed the point of the shovel on top of it, then jumped on the back of the blade with both feet. The shovel sank a few inches into the packed earth. He smiled. For once in his life, it paid to be overweight. He leaned on the shaft and pried up his first shovelful of dirt, and then he dumped it off to one side. Only 10 million more to go, he thought, and then he placed the shovel back in the crack and jumped on it again. He unearthed several shovelfuls of dirt in this manner before it occurred to him that he was dumping his dirt within the perimeter of his hole. He laid his shovel flat on the ground and he marked where the edges of the hole would be. 5 feet seemed awfully wide. He moved the dirt he'd already dug up out past his mark. He took a drink from his canteen. 5 feet would be awfully deep too. The digging got easier after a while, and the ground was hardest at the surface, where the sun had baked a crust about 8 inches deep. But beneath that, the earth was looser. But by the time Stanley broke past the crust, a blister had formed in the middle of his right thumb, and it now hurt to hold the shovel. Stanley's great-grandfather was named Alja Jalnuts. He was born in Latvia. When he was 15 years old, he fell in love with Myra Menkel. He didn't know that he was Stanley's great-great-grandfather. Myra Menk was 14. She would turn 15 in 2 months, at which time her father had decided that she should be married. Alja went to her father to ask for her hand, but so did Igor Barkov, the pig farmer. Igor was 57 years old. He had a red nose and fat, puffy cheeks. "I will trade you my fattest pig for your daughter," Igor offered. "And what have you got?" Myra's father asked Alja. "I have a heart full of love." I'd rather have a fat pig," said Myra's father. Desperate, Alja went to see Madame Zeroni, an old Egyptian woman who lived on the edge of town. He'd become friends with her, though she was quite a bit older than him. She was even older than Igor Barkov. The other boys of his village liked to mud wrestle, where Alja preferred visiting Madame Zeroni and listening to her many stories. Madame Zeroni had dark skin and a very wide mouth. When she looked at you, her eyes seemed to expand, and you felt like she was looking right at you, right through you even. Alia, what's wrong? She asked before he'd even told her that he was upset. She was sitting in a homemade wheelchair. She'd no left foot. Her leg stopped at her ankle. I'm in love with Myra Menk, Alia confessed. But Igor Barkov has offered to trade his fattest pig for her. I can't compete with that. Good, said Madame Zeroni. You're too young to get married. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But I love Myra. Myra's head is as empty as a flower pot, but she's beautiful. So is a flower pot. Can she push a plough? Can she milk a goat? No, she's too delicate. Can she have an intelligent conversation? No, she's silly and foolish. Will she take care of you when you are sick? No, she's spoiled and she will only want you to take care of her. So she's beautiful. So what? Pfft. Madame Zeroni spat on the dirt. She told Alia that he should go to America. Like my son, that's where your future lies, not with Myra Menk. But Alia would hear none of it. He was 15 and all he could see was Myra's shallow beauty. Madame Zeroni hated to see Alia so forlorn, so against her better judgment she agreed to help him. It just so happens my sow has given birth to a litter of piglets yesterday, she said. There's one little runt whom she won't suckle. You may have him. He'll die anyway. Madame Zeroni led Alia around the back of her house to where she kept the pigs. Alia took the tiny piglet, but he didn't see what good it would do him. It was hardly bigger than a rat. He'll grow, Madame Zeroni assured him. Do you see the mountain on the edge of the forest? Yes, said Alia. On top of the mountain there is a stream where the water runs uphill. You must carry the piglet every day to the top of the mountain and let it drink from the stream. As it drinks, you are to sing to him. She taught Alia a special song to sing to the pig. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, you should carry the pig up the mountain for the last time. Then take it directly to Myra's father. It will be fatter than any of Igor's pigs. If it's that big and fat, asked Alia, how will I be able to carry it up the mountain? The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it? Asked Madame Zeroni. Of course not, said Alia. Do you think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow? No. Every day you carry the pig up the mountain, it will get a bit bigger, but you will grow stronger. After you give the pig to Myra's father, I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything, said Alia. I want you to carry me up the mountain so that I can drink from the stream, and I want you to sing that song to me. Alia promised that he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would be doomed for all eternity. At the time, Alia thought nothing of the curse. He was just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem much longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni, and he would be glad to carry her up the mountain. He would have done it right there and then, but he just wasn't yet strong enough. Back to Stanley. He's still digging. His hole was about 3 feet deep, but only in the centre. It sloped up towards the edge. The sun had only just come up over the horizon, but he could already feel its hot rays on his face. As he reached down to pick up his canteen, he felt a sudden rush of dizziness, and he put his hands on his knees to steady himself. For a moment he was afraid he would throw up, but luckily the moment passed. He drank the last drop of water from his canteen. He had blisters on every one of his fingers and one in the centre of each palm. Everyone else's hole was a lot deeper than his. He couldn't actually see their holes, but could tell by the size of their dirt piles. He saw a cloud of dust moving across the wasteland, and he noticed that the other boys had stopped digging, and they were watching it too. The dirt moved closer, and he could see that it trailed behind a red pickup truck. The truck stopped near where they were digging, and the boys lined up behind it. X-ray in front, and Zero at the rear. Stanley got in line behind Zero. Mr. Sir filled each of their canteens from a tank of water in the bed of the pickup. As he took Stanley's canteen from him, he said, "This isn't the Girl Scouts, is it?" Stanley raised and lowered one shoulder. Mr. Sir followed Stanley back to his hole to see how he was doing. "You better get with it," he said, "or else you're going to be digging in the hottest part of the day." He popped some sunflower seeds in his mouth, and he deftly removed the seeds with his teeth, and then he spat them into Stanley's hole. Every day the Alia carried the piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter, Alia grew stronger. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, Alia's pig weighed over 50 stones. Madame Zeroni had told him to carry the pig up the mountain on that day as well, but Alia didn't want to present himself to Myra smelling like a pig. Instead, he took a bath. It was his second bath in less than a week. Then he led the pig to Myra's. Igor Barkov was there with his pig as well. "These are two of the finest pigs I've ever seen," Myra's father declared. He was also impressed with Alia, who seemed to have grown bigger and stronger in the last 2 months. "I used to think you were a good-for-nothing book reader," he said, "but I see now you could be an excellent mud wrestler." "May I marry your daughter?" Alia boldly asked. "First, I must weigh the pigs." Alas, poor Alia should have carried his pig up the mountain one last time. The 2 pigs weighed exactly the same. Stanley's blisters had ripped open and new blisters formed. He kept changing his grip on the shovel to try to avoid the pain. Finally, he removed his cap and held it between the shaft of his shovel and his raw hands. This helped, but the digging was harder because the cap would slip and slide. The sun beat down on his unprotected head and neck. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, he'd been aware for a while that his piles of dirt were too close to his hole. The piles were just outside of the 5-foot circle, but he could see that he was actually going to run out of room. Still, he pretended otherwise, and he kept adding more dirt to the piles that he would eventually have to move. The problem was that when the dirt was in the ground, it was compacted. It expanded when it was excavated. The piles were a lot bigger than his hole was deep. It was either now or later, so reluctantly he climbed up out of the hole, and once again he dug his shovel into his previously dug dirt. We're going to leave it there now, Year 6, and I'm going to return tomorrow with some more stories of Stanley and Alia, and we'll move on to Chapter 8 as well.